Hello, today is December 12th, 2012, and just so you know, that's 12/12/12, and the last time any of us who are here will ever see that. The next one is not for like 90 some years, so everybody who's alive now won't be then, most likely. Anyway, December 12th, 2012, and you're listening to I Think You Think, a podcast that puts a new spin on debate and discussion. I'm Justin. On the other side of my computer screen is James.
Hello, folks.
And we are your hosts and carry no credentials worth noting. I Think You Think is a podcast that focuses on what we, your hosts, think, but also what you think. Too many times we spend debates and discussions talking past one another and not enough time trying to learn and understand why someone thinks what they think. This is what makes I Think You Think different, because we are focused on why people think the way that they do and why we think the way that we do. James and I believe that the forum of ideas should be open to everyone and everyone should have the opportunity to challenge and be challenged by ideas. We are not here to pass judgment, but merely discuss ideas and topics. This podcast, first and foremost, is a conversation between us and hopefully you. If you'd like to participate, please feel free to email us at ithinkyoutthink2012@gmail.com. You may also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ithink.youthink or on Tumblr at ithinkyouthinkpodcast.tumblr.com. I Think You Think is produced by StolenArts Productions and is recorded live at Fisher International Studios. How are you doing today, James?
Doing good. How are you doing today?
I am really excited because in almost 24 hours, I will be sitting at a 3D IMAX to watch the premiere of The Hobbit.
If you're lucky, you actually get to sit next to the people that went with you too.
Yeah, yeah. I see. I don't even know what time we're going to be going to get in line. The last time I went to a midnight premiere was for the last Harry Potter movie.
Oh wow, it
And
shouldn't be that bad.
I don't know, because, Lord of the Rings, amazing, unless you watch it all at the same time, in one go, the extended edition. I did that about 3 months ago, and I don't recommend it.
Man, that's on my to-do list. I have not watched a Lord of the Rings movie in probably the better part of 2 years in anticipation of doing that someday. So
Well,
I'm gonna avoid your advice, and we'll get back to that someday when I actually achieve it and see if I have a different outcome.
it's not bad as long as you have Wi-Fi and a computer, something to kind of keep you busy during the long, drawn-out, boring parts. The
Like the
Sam.
second movie.
Yeah, yeah. Or I was gonna say the Sam and Frodo storyline is kind of boring.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, it was like 12, 13 hours of us sitting in a little mini theater watching it, and we didn't have Wi-Fi and we didn't have computers. It was interesting. After the last movie, we were very done.
Well, my plan was to do it at home with Blu-rays and food being delivered to my house, preferably in flannel pajamas. That's my plan. I think it's an excellent one.
Well, The Hobbit's got 3 parts to it as well, so.
Really, they did. I heard they were planning on it, but I didn't know they had actually gone all the way to a three-parter.
Yeah, the last thing I had heard that it's going to be 3 parts. One releases obviously, tomorrow, well, Friday, in about 24 hours. The next one will release roughly the same time next year in December. And then the third one, for whatever reason, Peter Jackson decided that he's going to release it 6 months later in like July of 2014. So, he's really breaking the mold, because all of his others, they were all released in December. All 3 of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and
Maybe it's his consolation prize for getting you to pay for one movie 3 times.
yeah. Oh man. Okay. If you're ready, we could dive right in, unless you got anything crazy going on for you this weekend.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to fit into my schedule to go see the first Hobbit movie Friday morning now. But beyond that, no, I'm ready to jump right in. I'm excited about our topics today. I think they're pretty big ones. So
Yeah. I mean, when we started talking about it on Sunday, I I was really looking forward to being able to talk about them because I've already had little mini conversations with people. And now to stop being cryptic, we'll actually tell you guys what the topics are. So a couple of I believe weeks ago now, because I vaguely remember it being several weeks ago that I first heard the announcement, there was a video. I'm sorry, not a video, a picture that was on the front page of the New York Post, and it was of a gentleman who had been pushed into a subway tracks. Down off of this. Now, this is not. I'm not somebody who grew up in the city. I'd never taken a subway anywhere, so I'm not. My only experience of ever being in subways is on like video games. So basically, pushed him down into where the tracks are for the subway, and he was trying to get up as a one of the trains was coming, and he could not get up, and a person snapped a picture of him stuck down here, unable to get up, and the train is probably 30 or 40 feet away from him, barreling down on him. Uh, and he ended up dying. Obviously, he was killed when the train struck him. On the New York Post's front page, right over top of the picture, is the words "pushed on the subway track. This man is about to die," and then in large font right across the bottom, "Doomed." So this has generated a lot of conversations. Um, Good and bad. I mean, there are people talking about what's going on, not talking. What does this mean? What is the role of media? Did they step over the line? Was the photographer did the photographer do something wrong? Did the people who were there do anything wrong? Or did they do the right thing? Or what? And so I'm interested in having the conversation with you, and then anybody out there who wants to get involved, please feel free to email us throughout this week, and we will address any questions or any of your thoughts next week as well on this. So, first off, James? What was your kind of initial reaction to the picture and the story and everything?
Well, for me, when I just look at that picture, it just, I just imagine some person at the New York Post going, wow, this is going to sell me a lot of papers. It's not a person on the track who's literally about to have their, life taken from them and, whatever friends and family lose this person. It's we're going to sell more papers today than we did yesterday or tomorrow than we did today because I have this awesome picture, And then as I learn more about it, and the photographer, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it doesn't ring true to me. He claims that he was trying to flash the camera at the driver of the subway car so that he would stop.
Hmm.
But the picture looks pretty well framed to me to be panicky. I'm just flashing my flash in hopes that this, you know, train will stop.
Right, right. And I don't know. Now different phones are different. I don't know if it was a camera or if it was a phone. I hadn't looked into it, but
He is actually a photographer for the New York Post. So I assume that it was a camera. Again, I don't know either, but that is his job. So assuming it's pretty, I would say it's a relatively safe assumption that it's an actual camera. I mean, the photograph looks nice. I don't think that we're dealing with just a cell phone camera.
just when I had first heard of it, I listened to a lot of radio news. I don't get a lot of I don't watch a lot of news stations. I've got about a 20-minute drive to work, and then obviously back after work. But so I get a lot of radio news, and so the first time I had heard about it, my initial thought, because everybody has cell phones. Well, not everybody, but many people have cell phones, and they all pretty much come with cameras nowadays. And so I had just thought, because they hadn't said that it was a. Now that you bring it up, I have actually heard them talking about the fact that it was a New York Post photographer. But my initial thought was, oh, it was some just guy who snapped this photo, and now he's going to be rich because he's going to sell this photo to whoever he's going to sell it to. Um, and so I hadn't even seen the picture for nearly a week, and they had been talking about it. It wasn't until you and I decided that we were going to do this as a potential conversation that I even looked up the picture to kind of know what we're going to be talking about. Um, if you guys haven't seen this picture, we're going to post a link to it. Um, well, actually, I'll put a picture in the video here, and then we'll also have a link to some of our articles on our Tumblr, um, and you can kind of check those things out as well. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I was floored when I heard about the story, um, because I can put myself into that kind of thought process as here I am stuck and I can't get up, and here's this subway, and oh my god, I'm gonna die.
Right, right. And from everything that I have heard about or read, no one moved to help him,
Yeah,
which is a whole different conversation. But I agree. I hadn't looked it up either. I had heard about it on news radio because I listen to it as well. I have a shorter drive to work, but I figure, get my news in little snippets when I can. And I purposely didn't look up the photo until we decided we were going to talk about it. Because I'm not a fan of this type of media.
well,
It's just, it's, and it drives people. It had to sell papers. I mean, I haven't looked up anything, but I would guess that this paper probably sold more than the average of that day a week, probably by a large margin.
yeah, and I'm sure it's definitely uh, made. I mean, obviously, people are still talking about it. There's pictures everywhere, and it's still in the news. They're still talking about what's going on. What do you? I mean, not to kind of go off, but what do you think? What do you think about? Let's go. Let's kind of break things down here. We've got a couple of things that are going on. So let's just stick with the media for a second. The original picture obviously didn't have any of this text on it. This text is stuff that was added by New York Post. So regardless of people not helping him, regardless of why the photographer took the picture, the New York Post chose the words that they were going to put on there. Pushed on the subway track, this man is about to die, doomed.
It's huge drama. It grabs your eye. It's it's like I don't know if we talked about this in the last podcast or just in our general conversations between. But a lot of times, the 5 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news, they'll always have some very dramatic lead in, like, on the news tonight, are the Ziploc bags you're using killing your family? You know, things like that, because that gets people in. It's always these huge, flashy, dramatic, scary things to get you to buy the paper or watch, NBC instead of ABC, CBS instead of Fox. Um, and it's not helpful. I mean, none of these words, uh, like, I don't know, credit's not the word, like, respect the fact that this man died in this situation. You know, they make it very drama, like it's an advertisement for a movie.
Yeah,
I mean, it should be like tragedy. Man loses his life in horrible subway accident, you know?
no one
And
attempts to save him.
right. I mean, that's a whole, like you said before, that's a whole nother thing there. I mean, that's a tragedy unto itself that nobody moved to help him. You know what I mean? Um, but it's not saying that. It's not talking about the tragedy, not in that way, at least. It's pushed on the subway track. This man is about to die, doomed. It's, I don't know, the tone of it kind of sickens me.
Yeah,
I
it,
mean, it's awful,
it's almost tabloid esque.
definitely.
Um, well, I guess does does the media in general? I mean, is it the media? Do you think that it's the media's fault that they've gone so that they feel like this is the best way to report this, or do you think it's more of a like our culture as consumerism, that leads to us. Like New York Post, is it New York Post is thinking on their forethought, I want to sell as many papers. This is what's going to sell as many papers. So let's do it. Versus a culture that needs to have the drama in order to want to um, uh,
Like purchase that paper.
right. Like I'm not going to purchase a New York Post. I don't buy newspapers. I get my news from the internet and from radio. So, but if somebody my thought would be, for the most part, if you read New York Post every day, you're going to buy New York Post regardless. But is it because New York Post says, well, this will sell more papers, let's do it this way, and it's the culture that is more to blame than media saying we need to do it this way because it will sell more papers. I'm not even sure I'm getting.
Well, I mean, the question, I get where you're getting at. It sounds like which came first, the chicken or the egg? You know, like some person who runs a paper decides to do something a little more shocking than would be normal, and they sell a lot of papers. You think the other publishers don't hear about that? And they do, you know? So it worked, and the consumer buys it. So it's like it keeps building on itself.
Mhm.
I mean, we do. I mean, what's more highly rated? The Real Housewives of wherever, or some science program that talks about. I mean, there's a documentary. It's not a TV show, so it's not really comparable to a Real Housewives. But there's a documentary on Netflix called Happy, which is probably something that a lot of people should watch. It's really good. It talks about why people are happy, where happiness comes from, blah 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 blah. A much more useful thing to watch. I would guess that the Real Housewives of whatever, if there's any on Netflix, is probably getting better ratings in general, or is more likely to have some sort of spin-off um, taken up by some network, where they're like, well, we haven't done a Real Housewives of Schaumburg, Illinois yet. Let's try it. Then the sequel to Happy coming, something that might be a little more useful or educational. And that's just, I mean, we're both old enough to have seen it as it progresses, I mean, I feel like we're moving towards the old Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Running Man, or something that would The Hunger Games is a little more recent take on the exact same kind of thing. And it just keeps going farther and farther and farther. And this is just, it's like, I don't know which one came first, the chicken or the egg, but they're definitely feeding off each other. The consumers buy it, and then the publishers of whatever form of media push it a little farther, and it just goes back and forth and back and forth. There's a situation where the two DJs down in Australia called the hospital to get news about the princess. I think she's technically a princess at this stage.
I have no idea. I don't. My wife follows it more than I do.
Yeah,
So,
the wife of the prince. I guess that makes you a princess. I don't know
yeah, I
how
suppose.
lines of royalty work. I have a friend who was born in England. I could find out. I'll have the answer next time we're next podcast. But whatever it is, to find out about her pregnancy, she had really bad morning sickness, and then the nurse that took the call eventually got to her, and she's the one who gave out the information, and then ended up committing suicide.
Right.
Now, I can't say that it's their fault, because obviously, that's not an easy situation. But the fact that, she would commit suicide over it, leads me to believe, at least, and again, no qualifications here, it would lead me to believe that there's something wrong there to begin with, because
Right. She
if that
thought it the
happened to me,
best.
I would be calling up the radio station.
Yeah.
Like, they would have to block my number because I'd be so pissed at them. I would go in a different direction. But either way, for the sake of entertainment, they called up, they pulled this prank. Obviously, this woman was probably, I would guess, being sincere. I haven't listened to the tapes because I don't want to give the websites that would play those tapes, my hit that day. I'm not going to add to those numbers. But I would guess she was being sincere. If she's giving away the information on the health of a loved one, it's probably out of sincerity, I would assume. Um, and, they're just doing it for entertainment. she's trying to be sincere, and they just brutalize probably isn't the word. They used that to their advantage for entertainment, and I'm sure they probably got good ratings that day. I mean, in their defense, they're off the air. I heard some little snippets of interviews with them on talk radio on the way to work the other day, and they seemed like there's a female and a male host. The lady host, it basically sounded like she couldn't stop crying. They haven't been to work since it happened. From what I understood, what I gathered from the little snippet that I heard, they basically refused to go back to work. They don't know what to do. You know, they sounded sincerely like they really felt horrible about how the situation played out. But, you know, as bad as they feel now, you know, what they were doing for entertainment to get their ratings, you know, is, in my opinion, not much different than the New York Post picture. You know,
Mm.
they're, you know, abusing, you know, situation to increase the monetary gain of, you know, their media outlet, whatever it is. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much you knew about that story down in Australia, but I mean, what is your reaction to something like that?
Well, I mean, my first thought when I heard it, um, is I had heard things on one day I had heard that it had happened, and then the next day I had heard about the um, the suicide. However, it was very early; it had just happened, and so they weren't saying it was a suicide. They were saying she had been found dead in this room, and they said they think it's a suicide, but they're not saying whether or not it is yet. That they were doing some that they were still figuring that out. So I kind of heard a lot of that stuff as it was kind of going on. Um, my first thought when they were talking about the day before she had been found dead, my first thought was, oh my God, this girl's going to lose her job because she gave out sensitive medical information over the phone to somebody. Because I don't know how much you know about like health insurance law and everything, but the little bit that I know is you can't give out health information to just anybody, even
Well,
certain.
that I mean, you're probably speaking of American law, and I don't know that the UK law is any different.
That's true.
But
Yeah,
you know, there's a reasonable chance that there could be different laws. But I agree. I had the same thought that she might lose her job.
and so it wasn't until the next day when they were saying she was found dead, and then my first thought was, oh my gosh, I wonder what happened. Like my initial thought wasn't that she had committed suicide. And other people around, when they were saying, "Hey, did you hear about this? She committed suicide." I said, "No, they haven't ruled that it's suicide yet. Um, they're still, they're still trying to figure out what had happened." I'm like, I don't like to call something, something until the people who make a lot more money than I do, who make it their life's work to make these decisions and this kind of stuff and do this kind of science and this kind of says, yes, this is what we're saying. We're saying it's a suicide, or we're saying it was a homicide, or it was whatever, because that's what their job is.
Right.
And but then as it went on, it seemed very clear that it was a suicide. And I had your initial thought is the same. Well, I mean, to a certain extent, um, her her committing suicide over this, there's something else going on. I don't know, like maybe she struggled with depression or something to that effect. I mean, I'm not saying she did, and I'm not trying to drag her name through the mud or anything.
Yeah, and it also doesn't take it doesn't take the blame away from them
Right.
because you know they did take advantage of someone who might have been struggling with other issues, and you know the straw that breaks the camel's back, or in this case, you know the 50 pounds of straw that broke the camel's back, because it's a big thing.
Right, right. And so when I had heard about it, my first thought is, I wonder how the show hosts, are reacting to this going on. And there was a part of me because when I first heard the thing about the radio show hosts, I was thinking they were like shock jocks, that are interested in like doing the most crazy, shocking things on the radio in order to to get people to listen or respond or be angry or send them hate mail or whatever. And so I was thinking that these two were probably laughing it up, and so it's refreshing to hear. I didn't know that you had heard this other um, interview that you were talking about. I hadn't heard about that, and it's almost refreshing to know that there's remorse uh, from them about this that happened. At least they feel bad. At least they recognize that maybe they took it too far. Well, there's no maybe about it. I mean, in my opinion, they took it too far. That was wrong. And it, I don't like to try to make blanket statements about things like that, but to me, they def I see it as that they made a huge error in judgment. Um, and I don't know. Does that mean that they're liable to a certain extent of what happened? It,
It's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, if kids, there's bullying stuff going on. People talk about bullying every month or so. There's the news is talking about this kid was bullied or whatever, um, and if a child is bullied to the point where they feel like the only way out is to commit suicide, um, is the people who do the bullying liable for that? Likewise, are these radio show hosts, as it's great that they feel remorse for what happened, but are they liable? If they hadn't called, if they hadn't come up with this idea, because radio show hosts don't do these kinds of things on the fly. I mean, most of the time, radio shows they're planned. I mean, they know what they're going to talk about to a certain extent, and they don't just go, "Hey, let's just try this." They've talked about it and decided that that's what they're going to do.
Well, and they also their impersonations of the prince and the queen were well practiced.
Yeah.
I guess it was a regular skit they did.
Oh,
I don't really know too much details about it again, but I would assume, having listened to that kind of morning radio, that it was probably more, call the local grocery store and pretend you're the queen and you need eggs or something. You know what I
okay.
mean? Like silly stuff like that, where you're just getting like normal people in funny situations, and it's funny on the radio. Again, I don't actually know that for a fact, but it'd be my assumption. Um, so it was like a regular type thing that they did because they had practiced the voices and perfected these. So I agree. It's probably planned, and they're like, it was probably one of those. Hey, let's see if we can find out information by calling the hospital. Um, and I mean, the consequences were so big, for her and her family.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
there's a person who was alive who's now dead.
right. And
Be-
again, I think we both agree that it doesn't go all on them, you know. But I mean, even with bullying, I mean, those situations are horrible. Um, you know, and is there fault in the bullies? Definitely. But at the same time, there's more going on there. You know what I mean? I would like to think that if my younger sister or my younger brother, when they were at that age, got bullied, that they would have come to me, or our older brother. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Or some family member. And, and I'm not making any blanket statements. Every situation is completely different, and I mean, all those situations are horrible. And I wish for every one of those people that I've heard about that's committed suicide because of bullying, I wish I could have met them the day before, given them a big hug, and go punch someone in the face for them. I really wish I could, and unfortunately, that's not the way the situation plays out. But there's an important um, thing to realize, that there's always something going on in those situations. People, I mean, I feel like I'm so out of my depth talking about this, but realistically, when people commit suicide because of a situation like that, there's way more going on than the bullying or the phone call from the radio show. And it's all very scary, and it's every single one of them is a horrible tragedy. Um, and I wish I could fix those situations, or that there was more that I could do besides just fumble through having my opinions on the subject.
Yeah.
But there's, I think it puts it in a position where there is accountability, but they don't get the whole weight of it.
Yeah.
It's not murder. it's not murder, you
Yeah,
know?
I mean, I can see that. I mean, I can't say specifically, but I would probably say that I have a problem with them um, being tried for murder. In the end, the person who committed the young lady uh, who committed suicide, that in the end that was something you know she did because of whatever else was going on. Um, I don't think that the average person, um, even if I can think of the worst thing that would happen at work to me, and even it be something that I would lose my job over, me personally, I couldn't commit suicide over something like that.
Right.
And so there, yeah,
There are many people that go through much, much worse tragedies and persevere, come through it, damaged,
yeah,
but live on. People lose like all of their limbs and things like that, and it still can be happy people, like get through it. People lose, very dear people to them, sometimes in groups, and still persevere and go on. So we have the capability as humans to, endure tragedies. I mean, it's awful when any of those things happen, and there's no denying that in any way, shape, or form. But people can get through that. So we collect it, like as humans, we do have the ability to survive these awful tragedies, get through it, move on, without making that awful decision that some of these people were talking about, felt was the only decision they could make.
right. And
Um,
I don't want, um, I know I'm fairly certain you're in agreement with me. Um, we're not saying that because she made this decision she's less of a person than anybody else. This is a decision that she made, and in the end it was her decision to make. And I completely agree that in the end it was her decision, regardless of her reasons behind it. It was her decision to make. um, I don't think that the radio show hosts need to be tried for murder or anything like that. um, I think it's something that needs to be talked about. I think that radio show hosts should talk about what happened, and what it means to them and what it means to their show, and you know where they go with it, and what the company that owns the radio station does with it, and what the people who advertise during their show, what they decide to do with what happened. um, but yeah, I mean, I don't want anybody to think that because of where our conversation has kind of gone, that there's something wrong with her decision to end her life. Um,
No, no. I
yeah,
mean, we have about as little information as anybody could possibly have.
yeah,
I mean, and I feel a huge amount of empathy for her and her family. Um, I agree. I mean, charging the radio host for something as drastic as murder would seem very, very extreme. Hello.
okay. All right, we're back. It's recording again.
Excellent.
Hey guys, I'm sorry that you guys missed an amazing thing that James kind of went into. We had software. We had an issue with the software program that I use for recording our Skype calls. I'm really sorry because it was really good stuff that James was talking about, and um, so I think that we've kind of drilled this topic about as much as we can. We don't have a lot that James was hitting on it. We don't have a lot that we can really say in terms of what it's like to be in those positions, what it's like to kind of deal with those kind of things. We're just average guys, and trying to formulate our ideas around this. But there's something that James, and I'm really with him on this, that I think that needs to be said, and so I'm going to let him take it, and then we're gonna jump back to a different topic to kind of change where we're going with this. So James, go ahead.
Well, guys, I just wanted to wrap up with saying, if there's anyone out there that is having any thoughts along those lines, having a tough time of it, please make sure you reach out to somebody. tons of organizations out there. A Google search will probably get you 6 numbers in a flash. Because there's always a way to turn it around. There's people out there that's willing to listen, make those phone calls, let someone be there for you. Because there are plenty of people out there that are eager to do that. So I just wanted to say that, there's a ton of people out there that care. So, make sure you're reaching out if you feel like you need it. But Justin, I'll let you carry us on or back to the last topic or the next topic.
Yeah. Um, I want to get back to the original picture where we kind of started this topic on the this man is about to die. For lack of a better term, that's really what this picture has been deemed. It's there's two other little aspects about this picture. In the short amount of time that we have left, we're looking roughly about a half hour we have left, and so I want to hit these as fast as we can. But the first one I really want to get on is the fact that nobody helped him. There's no the train is so close, and maybe somebody had been trying to help him and then ran off when they saw the train because they just got scared. But from what I understand, from what I've read, what I've heard, nobody tried to help him. Um, he had fallen off. He was trying to climb back up, and he couldn't. And maybe nobody could react fast enough to help, um, or what it is, and why. I guess I, I'm trying to wrap my mind around it because I've been not in as serious of situations, um, but one in particular. I was at work. I was near the front doors, and a young mother had a child, probably about 2, who took off running for our automatic doors that lead right out into our parking lot. Um, and she tried to drop her bags and go after her child as fast as possible, but I was much closer to the child at that point, and the child was already exiting the door, and running towards the parking lot. And my thought wasn't, oh my god, I'm scared to death, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to help. It was just, you have to stop that child from going into the parking lot. And so I actually took off after the child and pushed him to the ground because I wasn't going to be able to grab him. I pushed him toward the ground in order to stop him from going into the parking lot. Now, not forward pushing him. I was pushing him back away. But
Like
I was because I
down
was
onto his butt, basically.
yeah, so that he would fall back onto his butt because there was no way I could stop my forward momentum. I was going to go out into the parking lot. I already knew that. But I figured me getting hit by a car had a much better chance of me surviving than a 2-year-old being hit by a car. And so I pushed him back and ended up out in the parking lot. And
Right. And
yeah,
go ahead.
no, and I've been in other very similar situations in which my first thought was, I've got to protect this other person, or I've got to do something to help this other person. And it's not even big things like, oh my god, this guy's going to get hit by a train. It was, oh my god, that woman, that older woman is walking across a sheet of ice with a walker, and I'm afraid she's not going to make it. And I will, drop whatever I'm doing or stop or get out of my car and walk over and try to help them. And so it's hard for me to really wrap my mind around the idea that nobody helped.
Well, I mean, the first thing I was thinking when you were talking about the 2-year-old is that you are a father, so that like reaction and just paying attention to what kids are doing is a little more innate. I mean, I'm not even a father, but I have enough nieces and nephews that working in a restaurant, there's kids there all the time, and I see myself reacting. Like even if I'm too far away, like I see it out of the corner of my eye, and I'm immediately like sort of jerking in that direction if there's a child situation. And also we live in the suburbs, you know. In
Hmm.
the city it's a bit of a different situation. You walk by, people will walk by bums that are covered in, their own piss passed out on the street, and just step over them like it's nothing. So there's a little desensitization, like they're a little desensitized just from that attitude that pervades some cities. I'm sure it's not all, but most cities maybe even. But then I think like our society is just getting more and more distant from one another. I have literally served families, entire like a mother, father, son, daughter, where the entire time they were at the restaurant, they were all on a smartphone or an iPad or something similar. I mean, that is dinner out to some families now. They're not actually together. They just happen to be sitting in the same place and ordering food that's going to be on the same check. They're not interacting in any real way. I mean, sure, maybe they're all playing some online, maybe they're all playing Farmville together or something. I don't know. But that's not the impression you get. They're all in their own little worlds and just separate. And I feel like that distance grows more and more. We're both old enough to remember when there was none of that there. But as the generation shifts and the people that are like entering high school now or graduating college in 8 years, it's going to be even more so. I mean, it's only going to increase that distance, like that person down there isn't my Facebook friend,
Mhm.
like I'm more worried about what Bob had for lunch today or the funny little quip that Conrad posted or whatever it is, you know what I mean? And people don't react. I would like to think I've never been in a situation as extreme as what happened in that subway.
Right.
I would like to believe though that I would react. And from what I understand of those situations, when one person reacts, especially if they call out, people instinctively follow that lead and that leadership. If somebody would have run forward, like, let's help this guy, like it probably would have been like three, four, six people that would have come forward.
Right.
But that one leader, that one person to react wasn't there at that time. So, the rest of the people that are just trying to look down and go about their day and, don't want to connect with the people that are around them. At least that's my presumption, that they don't want to make that connection. They just want to like get in the subway car, get to their stop, get off, go home, and be done with dealing with the outside world and jump on Facebook or watch TV or whatever it is they're going to do when they get home. It's like there's such a huge disconnect. I remember being younger and whenever you wanted to the store, when people, I mean, not every store, but many stores, when you'd go in there and whoever was working at the store would say hello, it felt like that's just what they did,
Hmm.
not the employee manual on how you greet a guest, and they're only doing it because they're forced to.
Right.
So, I mean, I think the distance we're placing that, or not that we're placing, but that seems to be increasing, among people is only going to get worse. And I think this is kind of a reflection of it.
Mm.
I mean, what do you think? I mean, what do you think was going through the minds of the people? I mean, obviously you would feel or at least hope that you would have reacted in the proper way in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I, I, I'm with you in the sense that I would love to believe, and I don't want to conflate any of the um, little Boy Scout kind of things that I've done to help other people are in any way equivalent to the possibility that if I ran over to help that guy, there's a very real possibility that I could end up injured or dead myself in trying to help him.
Right.
And you know, when you were talking about the fact, we live in the suburbs, um, we're I'm a father. You have nieces and nephews that are very. Your family is my family's much more spread out. Your family's still, they all live very close together. You probably see them pretty often, and so you can easily empathize with that kind of a situation. But now that I'm thinking about it, I could actually imagine that there were people on the platform who were willing to help, um, but feared their own safety. I mean, they might have seen that subway train coming and thought to themselves, um, if I run over there to try to help this guy, he might pull me in, or I might try to get a hold of him. He'll grab my arm, he gets taken, and I'm going with him.
Yeah. And all we have to sort of make these assumptions is basically one snapshot. We
Yeah, one picture.
and you can't even see all of the people that are the other people, which is the position we're trying to put ourselves in. We don't know how far away they are. We don't know what's going on. There's also the aggressive person who pushed him in there who creates an entire another sort of energy around a situation.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because now you have an aggressive, crazy person somewhere nearby who just pushed someone onto the tracks. So now the courage to react needs to be notched up a couple
Right, because
because
if the guy that pushed him was standing just out of camera, I mean, I'm not saying he was, but I mean, there's a whole other aspect. We don't even know. You can't even tell by a picture how fast that train was going.
correct. And I mean, you could easily put yourself in that situation and imagine, okay, this person that pushed this other guy wants him to be dead,
Yeah.
in this moment of not knowing what's really going on. So if I get involved, maybe he's going to want me dead too, and that's going to cause a lot of hesitation in 99.9% of the population. If you have, you know, one of the heroes of this country, someone who's served in the military, who's faced things like that, they probably aren't going to really blink much of an eye at this unarmed person. You know, he's not going to let them prevent, him or her from trying to help this other person.
Right.
But for an average citizen is just coming home from work or on their way to work or whatever they're doing or groceries in their arms, you know, it definitely adds a whole new dynamic that is a barrier, to that. At least it's a hesitation to that reaction.
Hmm.
Should I? Okay, and maybe that hesitation was enough to stop him. I'm sure there's plenty of people that were on that platform that are dealing with guilt very similar to what we were talking about with the two radio hosts because they're thinking back and they're like, I did have time. Maybe I could have helped, and that's an awful burden because anyone who's going to actually have that thought, and really it sits with them is probably they're most likely a good person at heart because if you're just a shitty person that doesn't care, you're never going to think about that. It's probably I mean, it could get to there's probably there are people in the world, I don't know if anyone there right now, that's a funny story to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh yeah, I was there for that kind of like
Yeah, this
apathetic.
one time.
Right.
Yeah. Did I ever tell you about the time I watched somebody get run over by a subway train?
Right, exactly, and
Yeah.
like it's yeah.
And as you were speaking, I was thinking to myself, how different would my reaction be if I was standing there holding my children's hands and my option was let go of my children's hands to go take care to go help this guy versus I'm going to make sure that my children don't possibly see what's about to happen.
Right. I mean, and that's a whole nother level. I mean, like I mentioned a little while ago, I don't actually have kids, but I mean, you I would like for me, like when I think about that, if it was my kids, my nieces and nephews that were, the age your children are,
Hmm.
um, I think like for me, the right thing to do would be to shelter them so they don't see it and just slowly and calmly in a way that they can't see what's going on, bring them out of the subway and find another way home that day.
Yeah.
Because you know, kids come first, I mean, it's like, and this is a weird analogy. I don't even know if I have the right analogy, but there's so much more left for them. You know what I
Okay.
mean? That and when they're your kids, I mean, even if they're like your village's kids, which would be my nieces and nephews, you know,
Hmm.
their protection has got to come before a random adult when it looks like it could be one or the other. If
Right.
it's a completely safe situation, if it's you and two other people and your kids, you know, then you can probably react or somebody in that group can because there's still people to protect those children.
Right. No, I mean, uh, after my first son, my only son, after my firstborn, my eldest was born. I remember the night we brought him home from the hospital. My wife had gone to take a shower, and he was sleeping in this little bassinet we had next to our bed, and and I was sitting there, and I ended up tears just started flowing down my face because I started thinking about the potential, the amount of potential that he represented. Um, and you're right in the sense that if my children are there, And for most people, they're going to choose that their children over helping some random stranger, especially in a situation like that.
And that's the way it's supposed to be. That is just, that's why humans survive. That's why every species on this planet basically survives, because you protect your children, your offspring, your family before a stranger. I mean, ideally, it doesn't come down to that situation. Um, but yeah, I mean, if it is that situation, like for me, I mean, we're not strangers, but for me, I've spent 40 of my years already.
Hmm.
You know, your youngest had one now,
The
or could,
youngest is 2. Yeah, she turned
okay, two.
2. Yep.
Okay, so that means that I have, like, if all is equal, which is really not, but if all is equal, that means she has 38 more years than I do. That means that she's got 38 more years of value, 38 more years of life. So in that situation, she should always win out. I mean, man, this is the second, like, really, really deep topic that we have gotten into tonight. Whew,
uh,
this is heavy. I mean, I think it's important to talk about these things, but again, we have no qualifications. It makes me feel very underqualified. I mean, I have my opinions. I hope the things that both me and you are saying, I hope that people understand that, we're just very heartfelt and just trying to express it, because they are really heavy. And, I mean,
and they're things that I think when we see these pictures, when we hear about the young woman who committed suicide, that we think about on a very an underlying level. That they're really that kind of motivation um, behind what makes us angry about the picture, or what makes us feel the way we do about the picture, or feel the way we do about what happened in the UK. Um, and another great picture, if for you, for people who listen, who want to try to help even examine how they feel about these things and what their emotions are behind it and why they feel that way, and what looks like this picture might end up being, it's starting to look like this picture may end up being a Pulitzer Prize winner, because be, regardless, if you can hate the picture, you can love the picture, you can hate him and love him for different reasons, you can both hate and love it. What makes this picture so amazing is not unlike a picture that was taken by Kevin Carter. um, I believe I'm trying to it's a picture of a dying child in Africa, in the Sudan, who's starving, um, and it's just this very simple picture with this uh, starving child crawling along the ground with a vulture in the background. Even if you don't know what I'm talking about, my guess is if you look up the picture, you'll probably remember seeing it at some point, because this picture's been around for a long time. Um,
93, 94, it won the Pulitzer.
okay, all right. So it's been around for 20 years almost. Um, is that right? Did I do my math right?
Yeah,
Okay, so 20-ish years. Um, and it encapsulates, the rage and the empathy and the disappointment with just the whole thing.
yeah. I just looked at the picture again to get that date for you, and it's so upsetting to look at. And you had mentioned, when we had briefly spoken of this earlier, that he had eventually committed suicide, and that some people thought that maybe it was because of that picture. But the reality is, for a journalist who is in an area of the world where situations are actually that bad, it is impossible to help everybody. There are very wealthy, actors or musicians or just, businessmen that take the time to try to help the less fortunate in other parts of the world, and they can't even help everybody, and they could have millions and millions in the bank, but you can't help everybody. I mean, it doesn't make that picture any less upsetting. It is very hard to look at, in my opinion. Um, you know, but it's a reality of the world. It was definitely a reality of that part of the world at that time. and he took that picture, um, and it's going to be there forever. I mean, if you search it, I mean, it doesn't come up with a lot of other pictures. You see a bunch of those all in a row because they're in a bunch of different places on the internet. Um, Hello again.
Hello again. Okay, guys. Sorry again. My software hates me, or it doesn't like what we're talking about. Maybe he's getting it. My computer is starting to feel emotionally charged as James and I are getting about this. Um, when we set off to talk about these topics, it was I don't know about you, James, but my goal was not to get as deep as we got. I'm glad that we have. I think it's important things to talk about. But you know, we'll try to do something a little lighter next week, right?
Definitely, definitely. I mean, I really thought this was, my original thoughts. When we bring up a topic, I think we both do the same thing. You kind of think about what are the things we're going to hit on. What are kind of my thoughts? Where do I think I'm going to go with it a little bit? Just sort of organizing your thoughts on that subject a little bit. As the week goes on. Um, and I really thought this was going to be a big talk about media and accountability, and we did start off with that. But I think when we started to look at what they should be held accountable for, that's when, we really got into some, very heavy subjects, which are important. I think it's more important that they're actually talked about. It's just, I struggle a little bit because I feel like, we don't have any credentials and we are just everyday people, you know what I mean, who just work normal jobs. And it feels a little like it's such a heavy subject. I don't want to offend anybody because I just want to say, I mean, neither of us do. We just want to be able to talk about this. It's I think you think. This is just the things we think. And it's very cautious because a lot of these things could hit home for people. People that have had friends or loved ones that have committed suicide, or the struggles in Sudan, all those things. It's so heavy, it's so deep. It's just I want to make sure that I'm, being cautious and being respectful of, the people that it's a really even more touchy subject for them than it would be for us or many of the people that might listen to this, just because it hits so close to home. And I just think it's important. I just feel like I need to go back to that, to just let people know that, we have nothing but empathy for the people that have suffered in these different situations. And it's just our, trying to talk about it, trying to sort of reason it out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing in the conversation that we've had is my initial thoughts about, for example, the "This Man Is About to Die" picture. um, was I was aggravated that people didn't help, but in talking with you, James, in going over these things, I can at least kind of understand um, that the the other possibilities. My initial thought is I would have helped, but then when you start thinking about other things, what are the other situations? Was the person there who pushed him? Did somebody who wanted to help have children with them? Did somebody who wanted to help, um, but didn't see anybody else reacting? They needed that leadership, someone to take a leadership role, and then they would have helped. You know, I can at least understand how someone could have been in that position, and I think you were right in the sense that there might there's very likely people who were there on the platform who saw it happen, who are dealing now with guilt that they didn't help. And for ill or for good, that will probably haunt or affect them for the rest of their lives. And there is a point to being able to talk about these things so that we can work through this stuff, that we can have these conversations. And the like I think you think is all about the fact that everybody is going to look at that picture and have a different feeling about it. And we can all talk about it because those ideas, those feelings are worth talking about. And it doesn't matter if you know everything about, um, you know, social aspects and how people react in certain situations, or you're a firefighter and you know how you would react because you've had the exact same situation happen, or you're a police officer, or you are in the military, or you're just some regular Joe like you and I, and how we feel about it. And that's what kind of brings me, I think, to our last little snippet that I wanted to hit on with this picture. When From the moment that I heard about the picture, as dis I've known about the Kevin Carter picture with the vulture and the child for a long time. I've looked at it many times, but there's an aspect that makes me angry at Mr. I would call him Mr. Carter, for what he did, because he didn't help. But at the same time, think about how many people look at that picture and are motivated to do something, or people who look at that picture and are disgusted that something like that goes on and want to help, or even somebody who looks at that picture and has a conversation or donates to a world charity organization that helps starving children in Sudan, or people who look at this man is about to die and maybe question that person that they're sitting next to on their subway ride, whether or not um, they would be willing to help that person, or even have that connection that was missing.
Or even, putting, like we've done, put yourself in that situation mentally, and then a similar situation could happen, and you're nearby. And because, we've had these thoughts, we've had this talk, you know, maybe you're become that person that's able to react, that's able to run forward and call out for more help and maybe help somebody, because I mean, it's basic visualization if you get down to it, or something like that. To sort of putting yourself in that situation, envisioning the fact that you would want to be successful. You wish you were there. You wish you could react and have helped this person, and then the situation does occur. And since you've, in a way, conditioned yourself, which is probably too big of a word, but, you've reviewed it in your head. You have a desire to want to, you know, be able to react in that moment and help somebody, that you react quick enough, you call out properly, you bring other help, and possibly save someone's life. And those things are impossible to track, because I mean, this is just one conversation that's being had, and there are hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of conversations that this most recent picture about the subway has generated, and a 20-year-old picture. I mean, you're right. It's probably incalculable how many people that photo has motivated to help in some way. Like over 19, 20 years, the amount of money that might have gone to charities because of that picture, I mean, and I mean, that's incalculable. There's no way that you could ever know. No one, I mean, you can't know a figure like that. But I think you're right. I would guess that it's probably relatively substantial, whatever it is, because it is an emotionally charged photo, and it's going to make you think, and it's probably, you know, going to make a good number of people want to do something significant, um, if the opportunity is presented to them because of that. I mean, that situation is beyond repair, but, it reminds you that there are tragedies that happen every day in the world, and maybe I can stop one of them if I, start giving, it only takes $1 a day, the commercials for the Christians Children's Charity or whatever it's called. I mean, could I squeeze out $30 a month to be a regular part of a charity? Yes, I could probably do that. I mean, I normally give larger amounts a couple times a year to things that, sort of come in front of me. I like to use sort of that idea that the charity will show itself when I need to. I have a lot of former employees that I'm friends with on Facebook. One that did a charity run for cancer, and when I saw that he needed $75 more, which isn't that much money, but I did donate it to get him to where he needed to go, so he could try to far exceed that number. And those are the kind of charity opportunities I normally take. But I mean, I could take $30 a month. I think a lot of people could, and I'm guessing that a lot of people probably have from seeing that picture of the child in the Sudan with the vulture.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm reminded of a story that you may have even heard, and um, probably some of our listeners have heard because it's almost done too much. But I kind of really I would like to just hit on it really quickly. An old man and a grandfather and his grandson are walking along a beach just after the tide has gone out, and as they're walking along, the grandfather is scooping down um, and picking up uh, um, oysters and things like that that have remained on the beach that didn't get back out with the tide in time, and he's chucking them into the ocean. But there's thousands and thousands and thousands of these shellfish that are out there, um, and mollusks that are out there. And the grandson turned to the grandfather and says, "Why are you doing this? It's not making a difference," in reference to the thousands that are out there. And the grandfather picks up one more and looks at it, and he says to his grandson, "To this one, it makes all the difference," and throws that into the ocean. And you're never going to be able to help everybody. Um, you can only help, the things that you have there in front of you, the one thing, the one opportunity. And that's why, as much as you, as much as someone might hate those photos, as much as someone might be disgusted that that photographer for the man, this man is about to die, chose to pull the shutter release on his camera instead of doing something else. That decision allowed us to have this conversation. If he had run over and, let's say if he had the opportunity, decided he could save that person, it would have made a difference to that one person. But imagine the impact that having this conversation is going to have for years to come.
And by this conversation, I mean it's the conversation that we're having, and it's also the conversation about the same subject that so many other people around the country and around the world will be having. Ours is just one iteration of that conversation.
Well,
Should we talk about video games for a while, lighten up the ending, or what?
we might have to. We might have to. Um, yeah, I finally put in Red Dead Redemption to start
Oh,
playing
nice.
that. Um, and obviously, the my original save existed pre loss of my video games, so I had to start the game all over again, which isn't too bad because the last time I played it was years ago. So I only remember the basic aspects of the story. So I'm really interested in it, and I'm getting all excited about wanting to play it. Um, so yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that, to really getting back into it. And then obviously Hobbit is tomorrow. Are you playing anything right now?
I haven't been.
No.
I have been working a lot recently, so I haven't really been um, playing anything. Dishonored is still in my Xbox,
Okay.
and I think The Avengers is actually in my PS3 at the moment. I did just realize when you were talking about that that is actually less than 2 weeks till Christmas, which I find pretty exciting.
Mm.
Um, I'm just, I'm a big fan. We talked about it last time, so that's nice. Yeah, and there's no new games that are coming out. I mean, I have a friend of mine that's really convinced me that I need to play BioShock Infinite when it comes out,
Okay, I can see
which
that looks like a good game.
yeah, I think 2017. No, I don't know. It feels like I've been hearing about the game forever, and it's like one of those games that's never ever going to come out. Um, But
And
yeah,
assume
that's the only one I can think of that's coming out in the near future that I really
that.
feel like I should get my hands on.
Yeah, and if you've ever played the original BioShock, or anybody's played the original or the or BioShock 2, if they do a game as good as those games for BioShock Infinite, then that will be a really good game. I always get a little nervous when games continually have to push back
The
their
release dates.
releases and have been and really hype up the game for a long time, because I mean they've been talking about this game for at least 2 years. Um, as I recall, I could be completely wrong because my memory's about as good as a civet holding water. Uh, but yeah, I've got a question for you. It's a nice simple question that I um, I was thinking about, and because I've seen people walk down the street or walk through my store and look and down at the ground and see a penny or something on the ground and actually consciously not go and not pick it up. Um, and so I was interested in knowing, what is the smallest denomination of coin that you would be willing to actually pick up?
As a general rule, probably a quarter, but depending on what I was doing, it would depend on what I was doing. There are situations where I would walk by, um, depending on the situation. Um, Now, when we start getting to the dollar bills, especially five or higher, but yeah, I mean, a quarter, I guess. Like in a restaurant, you come across it all the time because people sit there, change falls out of their pockets. We're moving chairs, tables, booths to clean, and you'll always, there's a nickel, there's a dime, there's a quarter. Um, as a, but yeah, I guess a quarter for me. What about for you?
Oh, you know what? If it's a penny, I'm picking it up. Penny
You know,
or higher, I pick up any coin that I see.
then I'm going to assume that you owe me like 18 cents that I have walked by and then you have gotten to pick up because I didn't pick it up.
Well,
You can keep it though. We'll just call it even.
I, I'll say there's two major reasons why I picked them up. One, because the old adage, a penny saved is a penny earned, but it doesn't really matter to this because it's a penny picked up is a penny I've earned. Um,
Right.
I didn't save it, other than a life on the ground. But I collect coins.
Okay.
Not a lot, and I don't have them in like a 3-ring binder behind plastic or anything. I have a little Tootsie Roll bank container from when I was in, I think, high school. I got it, or junior high. I got it as for selling so many whatever. They gave me a little Tootsie Roll bank, and it's got money from different countries that I've been to, and coins, and I've got a $5 bill from like 1926, um, and some quarters from like the early 20th century, 1901, you know, and things like that, because I love the history behind that. This is a coin I'm holding in my hand from 1952, and just to try to imagine all of the people who have held that coin in their hand and the things that it's been used to purchase.
Right. If you could really like see the history of the life of something that old that's traveled that much, because I mean, something that's, even from, 1942, 70 years old, if it's just a household item, it might not have traveled that much. It's probably been in many houses. But if you take like a quarter that's that old, chances are, you know,
It
it's seen a lot. If you could actually know the full history, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, but I mean, like I've got 3 or 4 trays around my house just filled with coins, because if I see a coin on the ground, I'm gonna pick it up. It doesn't, I've picked up coins that have you know gum and crap stuck to them, and I'll get it off just so I keep the coin, because to me it's a penny. I mean, like, hey, that's a penny I didn't have.
Right? And I mean, I guess it just adds up.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so I was interested. I was thinking about that on my way to work, and I was like, that's a great question. That's one of those like really kind of fun little throwaway questions that I'd like to use in the future.
Right. Well, now it's all spent.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I said it.
Yeah. Nice. Nice.
Couldn't resist.
Okay. All right. Then I think it's about time to wrap up. I know it's been kind of a heavy show, guys. I know we've had some technical difficulties. Thanks for sticking with us. Um, and you know, any thoughts you guys have on this? Anything, your feelings about it? Please feel free to leave a message. Send us an email. Send us a message on our Facebook. Um, you know, even comment on the YouTube video. Anything. Just you know, we're here to have to not just talk to each other, but to talk to you guys. We really want to hear what you guys have to say about these things, because that's what this show is all about. That's what I think you think is about. That's what we're here for. James, I'm going to go ahead and let you have the final kind of word, and then we're gonna call it a night.
Okay. Well, again, thanks for listening to the podcast. Again, I just want to reiterate that we don't have any official credentials. We're just a couple ordinary people here, just trying to form our opinions in a way so you guys can sort of hear what we have to say. We really have no training. I feel like I've said this a lot in this podcast specifically, just because we've covered a lot of heavy topics. Um, and, I just wanted to thank everyone for listening and just be gentle. We mean well. That's all I got. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. Justin, as always, it was fantastic. And I will talk to you again in about a week.